Well, Advocate Dumisa Ntsebenza was a commissioner with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where some of the information that has been used in that documentary emerged. He joins us now. Good evening, Advocate. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, you did watch the documentary.
Yes, I watched it.
What did you make of it?
Actually, I watched it about a year or 2 years ago, when it was shown in the Cinema Nouveau. So when the NCA flighted it, it was the second and third time that I watched it.
What did you make of it?
Well, I mean, it's clearly is projecting the viewpoint of the filmmaker. The filmmaker clearly had an agenda to tell her story, except that it is not her story. It is our story. And I think if there is a lesson that should be learned from here, it is that we should tell our own stories, and we should start to interrogate our own stories as told by ourselves. I mean, the sheer arrogance of Pascale is breathtaking. I'll just cite 3 things just from the clip. One, she says she never gave Sidi Mufamadi a right of reply. I don't know about journalism, but in law, there's something called audia alteram partem. Secondly, she says, in any event, even if he had given him,
He would have corroborated.
he would have corroborated. Where in what she has in her documentary does it corroborate any of the claims that Sydney says makes? I unfortunately didn't watch what he was saying in his press conference because my day job is that of being an advocate. I've got to earn a living. But I mean, the third thing about it is when she says journalists must dig deep. When she didn't
And do what she didn't do.
And do what she didn't do. So, I mean, my reaction is not so much to the content of what she says. It's to the sheer arrogance. It's the sort of kind of bus-up mentality. We know what you ought to do. You do it as we would do it. And it's a pity, because what has it done? It has done exactly that which the Stratcom was established to do. You will recall that the Stratcom was a disinformation unit. It was called the so-called dirty tricks campaign. Your Paul Rasmus, your McPherson. I mean, the narrative...
Incidentally, he's the one who actually made the claim that it was
Yes.
Mufamadi who ordered the investigation.
And a journalist who considers that she comes with a scoop. And I'm not going into the merits of whether or not. I'm simply saying McPherson makes that claim to her. It's about a member of our society who is now an academic. It is about a former minister of state. And she says she never went to him and said, do you hear what this man is saying? And I wonder if she ever did her homework to establish who exactly the Stratcom was. I had a special unit. We got to know what these people were about. Some people were necklaced on the basis of dissension that was sown by Stratcom operatives. And I don't know why we should be so gullible as a people. When in 1997 and 1998 and 1990 we produced a report which paid special attention to the manner in which your Paul Erasmuses and your McPhersons, we called them by name, how they operated, how they sought to sow division within the liberation movement themselves and between the liberation themselves. Now they must be the authority to tell us. The history of Mandela does not need either a McPherson or a Pascale. It is there. It's documented. Her heroics are documented. How she suffered in detention are documented. We don't need her to sugarcoat it by coming here to tell us that you as journalists didn't do your homework when she didn't even do the most basic thing that journalists do, to give the person about whom you are going to write, especially if what is being said about the person is going to be detrimental to themselves. You give those people a chance. I believe journalists, just like lawyers, do that. She didn't do it. Now we don't want to write our own stories. In fact, I count myself as among those, because I should have written a further book other than the book I wrote with Terry Bell, The Unfinished Business.
Well, you did write that book with Terry Bell where you lamented, the fact that, there was a great deal of unfinished business. And I suppose several people or groups should, in fact, take responsibility. And it probably suggests that even people like Sidney Mufamadi, and we're not saying he was responsible for opening the investigation at all, what the documentary claims or what Macpherson claims in the documentary. But you did give them some pointers, didn't you?
Yes.
To say there needed to be further investigations. You did mention certain people and groupings by name.
Yeah.
You gave them homework, things to look into, which the government didn't, isn't it?
In fact, at the end of our investigative period, in 1998, when we presented to Mandela our TRC report, there were about 43 cases which would have amounted to about 200, where we said, for instance, we have not been able to complete the investigation here. The matter of Shamola Machel, all of those cases, there were about 43 cases. We said, these are people where you should further investigate and you should prosecute. No Utula Simelane. It is only now.
With the court challenge.
With a court challenge that, our democratic government, post-apartheid democratic government has begun to do prosecution. We have been making the noise since 1998. And where were they sitting? Why didn't they follow? Why didn't they prosecute at the time?
Well, I guess moving forward, what are the lessons that we have learned from this episode? Because it's not only, in my view, about the maker of this documentary, but it is also about South Africans who then took a lot of information that came out of the documentary, but in many, if not most respects, for their own ends. You had politicians that took stuff from the documentary, or that has been written from the documentary, to actually put out there names of people who were allegedly part of Stratcom without any proof.
That is exactly the point. How gullible can we be? You will probably recall that I had to fight for my reputation when I was fingered out in an amnesty hearing by a so-called gardener, Sibaya, who fitted exactly how the Stratcom operated. Perhaps our investigative unit was coming too close to them. And then, miraculously, there was a letter that was discovered that was saying my vehicle, XA12848, had been used to ferry arms which were carried from my vehicle to the vehicle that was used by APLA operatives to go and kill people at Heidelberg. I had to expose, with Pippa Green, a journalist from this country, Pascale, I hope you are seeing, Pippa Green sat me down and she interrogated me on a Friday, and then it was published on a Sunday I think it was Sunday Independent.
Well, incidentally, if I remember correctly, you nearly lost your, you were nearly taken out of the commission.
Yes.
For that.
Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Dr. Borain, I had to say, don't you see that this is the dirty tricks campaign from the same people which the whole TRC is about? These are people at work. These are guys at work. And then when this so-called gardener was exposed to be actually possessing property which he paid for cash in Kenilworth, people began to question. And that's how Sibaya panicked, and he came and made a clean breast of it, that he had actually been asked to smear me. Now, how many people must have the courage to say, because even then, the DP, the member of parliament at the time, was saying Ntsebenza must resign. I refused to resign, and I told the President
Well, in
Mandela
the same way that there are many people
Yes.
who now look at Archbishop Desmond Tutu differently because he was insisting that Winnie Mandela
Yes.
should apologize.
I told Mandela, the President said, they can go to hell. You are not going to resign. But it stuck with me. Not even Archbishop and Dr. Borain. I mean, they were in two minds now as to exactly where the truth lies. And I kept on saying, this is the work of Stratcom. This is exactly what the whole TRC is about. But fortunately for me, an investigation, not even the Goldstone Commission that was, by the end of that lunchtime on Monday, the following Monday, that I had been pointed out in a amnesty hearing of the previous, week. On that day, Sibaya came through and said, all I have been saying about you having been involved in the Heidelberg killings were lies. Now,
Advocate Ntsebenza, we've run out of time. I hope South Africans have heard you when you say, perhaps it's time we wrote our own history. And of course, those of us who bump or come across information really need to think twice before we put it out there.